Hi guys, Ricky Pope here, and today on the Christian Nerds Unite podcast, I interview a real NASA rocket scientist, Ms. Wanda Harding, the senior mission manager for the Mars Curiosity Rover launch. But before we get to that, I want to make a special announcement. After much thought and prayer, I am going to take at least a month off from the podcast starting next week. With my wife still in the hospital and with me recovering from my second stay in the hospital myself, I think it's best. I will be posting some classic episodes while I'm away. Some of you probably have never gone back and listened to some of these episodes that I'm going to share, so they might be new to you, especially if you're fairly new to the show. Rest assured, I will be back, and I hope to make the show better than ever when I return. I will be staying up with the social media pages and the group, but you might see fewer posts and comments directly from me. I want you to know that I love and appreciate each and every one of you that listens each week. This show has been a joy to produce for the past 2 years, and I cannot wait to see where the Lord leads us in the near future. Now, let's get right to our interview with Miss Wanda Harding. Ms. Wanda Harding, it is so great to have you on the Christian Nerds Unite podcast.
And thank you so much for having me.
So,
Excited.
tell us just a little bit about who Wanda is.
So Wanda today, to my students, is this math teacher who was crazy enough to leave NASA to come work with them. But before that, Wanda is a product of Atlanta, Georgia, raised by parents who were educators. Um, they were the ones who introduced me to Christ, introduced me to God, and served as my inspiration for what I chose to do. By believing in me, the education that I had from my early elementary, secondary years prepared me for a career in engineering. I'm a graduate of Hampton University, received a master's from Georgia Tech, had the privilege of working with NASA for about 20 plus years, in addition to with NOAA. Uh, on the outside, I'm a Sunday school teacher. I direct the children's choir at my church. I love my family. I have my niece and nephews that I call my three favorite people in the world, but everybody else comes into play. So that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of who Wanda is.
Now, your current claim to fame, or at least the thing that caused me to reach out to you, is that 10 years ago you were involved in a very significant launch for NASA. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to be a part of that bridge from Earth to space to get the Curiosity rover to the planet Mars. And as a senior mission manager with our launch services program, my team was responsible for making sure that we provided the correct environment so that the rocket, the launch vehicle, would not damage the spacecraft on its journey, and that we would be able to insert it into its proper trajectory so that that 8.5 month journey to Mars would get it where it needed to go. It was very exciting over the course of the duration of working with or preparing, getting up to launch. Over 200 people on our teams from Kennedy Space Center working with it. They had representatives from JPL who were our interfaces when it came to the launch campaign. And because we were also using, unlike Spirit and Opportunity, which had solar panels, we had nuclear power for the Curiosity rover because it was a much more robust mission, much more robust um, rover that we were sending to the surface. So there were some additional safety features that we had to bring into play as well. When you're sending something to another planet, there's something called planetary protection. And so as a part of managing the launch services there, we had to make sure that the environment for prepping Curiosity wouldn't introduce any contamination that we would be taking to another planet. So all of that had to come into play. And so November 2011, that was when our job sort of culminated because that was launch date, November 26th. And that 8.5 months, we were excited because our insertion was so accurate that they could reduce the number of correction maneuvers that they had to do on its journey to Mars. So we were excited about that because they had planned a couple of initial ones within the first couple of months of launch, but they didn't have to do it. And so I, along with a couple of my team members, got to go out to JPL August of 2012 to be a part of the landing event. And I tell you, it was so exciting when we got that first signal back that the rover had safely landed on the surface of Mars. But for me, it was exciting because the first selfie that Curiosity sent was a picture of its shadow. And I'm thinking like, wow, who does that? A selfie of a shadow on another planet. So that was to me a highlight. And it was just an exciting opportunity because being a part of history, everybody wants to, make some kind of impact or say you had some contribution to history. So being a part of that launch team and being a part of sending, something so um, trailblazing, if you will. We've been going to Mars, over 50 years with flyby missions and orbiters, and we've done the landers. The first rover was Sojourner back in '96 that we launched. But by the time you got Curiosity, we were ready to start answering some more serious questions. And over the past 10 years, those who followed the mission can see that we've answered some of those questions about water, about the possibility of habitability there. And, it's just been great. It was a great proof of concept also for Perseverance. And, Perseverance had the added feature of the drone. So now we're able to move around the atmosphere. So it's just an exciting time.
So, how stressful is it when you are just about to launch? What is that like?
Okay, it is very stressful because everything, and when I say everything, everything has to go just right. I sometimes have shared the countdown video with groups that I've presented and just had them go through the number of checks that have to acknowledge a go and readiness for launch before we take off, and even down to the weather. And on the day that we launched, it was cloudy, and you don't want to send metal through a field of charged particles, which is basically what a cloud is. And so we're sitting on console, and there, right at the time we were set to lift off, literally, there was an opening that allowed us to have a clear shot straight through. And so it, up until, and just liftoff is fine, but that's not the big deal. The big deal is a successful separation of the spacecraft from the launch vehicle. So clearing the launch pad, okay, we did that. Everything is going as planned. The launch vehicle, the boosters are separating on schedule. The fairing separates on schedule. Everything is good. And so you're waiting now almost 40 minutes because the separation occurred just over the Indian Ocean. So now you're just kind of waiting. And when you get that confirmation of satellite separation, you're like, yes. And the satellite separates intact. That's a good day. And so now, from our perspective, we're celebrating because, okay, we've done our part. And so now we're just waiting. And fast forward 8.5 months, we get to celebrate with JPL when it has the successful landing on the planet.
Yeah, I can't imagine. It's so difficult. I'm so impatient. I can't imagine waiting 8 months to make sure everything worked. The sheer idea of that bothers me.
And so, it's not that you're just sitting twiddling your thumbs, if you will, because you're constantly getting feedback and communication with the satellite, and like I said, the correction maneuvers are there. So
Yeah.
you're busy during that 8.5 months, but yes, you are also anxious. You've heard the reference to the 7 minutes of terror because the cruise to Mars, okay, that's straightforward, but they call that 7 minutes of terror because if you follow the landing process that they used for prior missions, like the airbags that they had for the previous rovers, well, Curiosity was
Hmm.
much too big for that. So they had the sky crane, and everything literally had to go right with that. The jet engines had to ignite properly for the sky crane. The tethers actually had to release the rovers, not get tangled. The parachute had to open for
Hmm.
the back shell. The heat shield had to function as it needed to. So there were a lot of parts, a lot of things happening there. So the excitement is merited. In this industry, you learn to wait. The original launch date for Curiosity was actually 2009.
Oh,
And
wow.
due to some technical issues, we had to delay the launch. And to minimize the energy required to get to the planet, we launch every 2 years pretty much because of the way the planets align with their orbit. 2010 could have provided an opportunity, but it would have required some extensive changes on the launch vehicle, the energy required for the trajectory. But it just made more sense. Let's just go ahead with the next best window, which would have been 2 years later. And so that's how we ended up going from October 29, 20, I'm sorry, October 2009 to November 2011 for the launch. And it was well worth the wait.
Wow, it's super exciting about everything they've been able to do, and I have loved following Curiosity and everything that's going on there. So, tell us a little bit. How did you get? I mean, you told us kind of your pedigree, but what caused you to decide? I think I want to help launch rockets.
So believe it or not, there were two aspects to that story. The first one, my parents, and I'm looking over here, let me go grab it right back. I got this book when I was about 5 years old. This isn't the original copy. I found another version, but it's called You Will Go to the Moon. And I remember studying this book as best a 5-year-old could study. And I was fascinated because this was always my favorite page. And on this page, you had
Hmm.
launch vehicle separation. And it was about a little boy who got to go to space station and got to go to the moon. But the interesting part was none of the characters looked like me. So I was like, okay, that's nothing that I'll be able to do. And so I just kind of threw it off. And in high school, I had a teacher that encouraged me because she noticed that I did well in math. I enjoyed computer science and dating myself. When I did computer science, we were learning basic and Fortran. So that's how far back I go. Okay, you can relate. Yes. But
I'm
anyway,
right there with you.
that
Yes.
that teacher was also my calculus teacher, and she said, Wanda, you would probably make a good engineer. Why don't you consider that? And my original plans were to be a concert pianist or a news journalist. So that's where I thought I was headed until that recommendation. So I never let go of the music, but I decided to go ahead and pursue engineering. And once I completed my master's at Georgia Tech, I had an opportunity to work in construction with a project as a project manager, and an opportunity opened up to apply with NASA. And I just, on a chance, answered to a prayer. And after I submitted the application, got the call, and basically like, when can you start? And I was like, okay, are you serious? And they said, given your background, and it was just at the time we were starting to settle in on, and I keep saying we, forgive me on that because I put myself back in my NASA days. But it was at the time we were, the International Space Station was a big deal.
Hmm.
And they were starting to, bring in more people to start making that into a reality. The partnership that we had with the Russians with their space
Hmm.
station was ongoing, but it was time for the components to start coming together. So I went down there to join that team and worked with the International Space Station for a couple of years. And then I was invited to join the Launch Services Program. And I would dare say the rest is history. So, in addition to MSL, I had the opportunity to work with, a number of satellite missions, but I would dare say Curiosity was probably the highlight.
Very cool. Well, so now you have written a children's book, correct?
I
Tell,
have.
tell us a little bit about that.
So one of the questions that I periodically got while working with NASA was, given all of the discoveries and everything that they're finding, do you still, believe in a God? And I was like, how can you not? Everything looks so organized, so intentional. I mean, it has to have originated with a creator. And so one of the ways I took to answering that question was creating this children's book. Very basic, very simple, that a child could understand, where you're linking, and it's a play on Psalm 8:2 with the title, When I Consider, as David just talks about, looking up at
Hmm.
the moon and the stars. And you look back at yourself and you're like, okay, by comparison, I'm this when you compare to the universe. But it was just my way of providing an answer to say, there is a connection. You can't divorce the two. And when you think about it, on a scale, the vastness of the universe, and then you compare the size of our solar system to the Milky Way, and it gets even smaller. And then you look at Earth compared to the solar system, and then you just get down to you. And it's just mind blowing to think that a God that's responsible for all of that cares enough about me as an individual that he created me. So it's a faith builder, simple enough that a child can understand. But as an adult reads the book with the child, my prayer is that their faith is also strengthened and that they're just reminded that, yes, he's a creator of an amazing universe, but there's more to the story. He can handle anything that I've brought to him, and he cares about me.
Awesome. Speaking of that question, what is it like as a believer working for what probably most people feel like is a career that probably doesn't lend itself well to faith? Was that an issue for you? You say you got that question. Was it antagonistic, or was it just general curiosity, or what was that like for
So
you?
the questions mostly were general curiosity. And I think, based on, the way you frame the question, yes, people often assume that if you're in an engineering or science industry, that there's a disconnect with your faith. So the questions really just came out of curiosity. And for me, interestingly enough, I had quite a few coworkers who were actually believers. And so, at work, there were those. I met some that, professed to be agnostic,
Mm-hmm.
and you have that, but it was not the type of environment where it was antagonistic or you were put on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel fortunate in that I was able to, express my belief, express my faith, and still get the job done, still maintain the respect with my colleagues and working well with the team, because you're working with a variety of engineers and scientists.
Mm-hmm.
And, the main focus is your big goal, which is, the successful launch of that mission so that they can go and gather the science. But for me, I'm smiling because I'm thinking the science you're gathering is just providing more proof and evidence that this was intentional. This has a purpose. This has a meaning. This all points back to a creator.
It feels like you had one of the most exciting jobs ever, to be able to, you literally are a rocket scientist. You're literally making things uh, shoot off from Earth, but you decided to make a pretty substantial move away from NASA. So how did that all happen?
So teaching was something that I always wanted to do. And my original plan was based on the inspiration I had with one of my college professors. My freshman year, in one of my introductory courses, my professor was a retired IBM engineer. And I loved the fact that he came to the classroom with this credibility of having worked in the industry. So when he talked about the content, it you kind of took it a little more serious because you said, okay, well, here's somebody that actually used it. So I'll pay attention a little bit more. And that was my inspiration. And because, like I said, I always wanted to teach, I wanted to be a teacher like Mr. Jenkins. I wanted to have the career background so that I could bring that experience into the classroom. And so my original plan was to work 3 to 5 years, but that 3 to 5 years turned into much longer because I was having a ball at NASA. And I got to a point, after the launch of Curiosity, I had an opportunity to go to the DC, Maryland area to work with NOAA on their next generation weather satellite program. And after that, for a couple of years, I realized, you know what, I can't keep running from the teaching. It's time to go ahead and make that change. And there was a fellowship program, Woodrow Wilson Teaching Fellowship Program, designed to serve as a bridge from industry to the classroom. And they had a program component in the state of Georgia, which was perfect because I wanted to return to my hometown to teach. So I applied to that program and next, had the opportunity go through, get a master's in teaching, and went to the classroom. And so this is my 6th year teaching, and without, fail, within the first month of each year, my students would start to ask, why did you leave NASA to come teach us? And, in my mind, I'm thinking, isn't this great? You have a teacher with this kind of experience. So now I can bring my network to you. I can help, bring the lessons
Hmm.
to life. And of course, by the second year, um, with Google, they're able to search you and find, and then they start going to pay scales and they're like, no, seriously, why did you leave to come teach us? And the answer was the same. I've had a wonderful opportunity, and I wanted to intentionally return to my hometown because I wanted to serve as not only inspiration, but as I tell them, they're going to be the ones in charge when I retire. And I
Mm.
can't complain about anything if I haven't done anything to contribute to the solution. And so this is my way of contributing by, you know, being a part of their development, getting them ready for those who decide to go into a STEM field. For me, even better, but I want to be able to expose them not only to just, the things that I've had a chance to do, but to start introducing them through my network of the opportunities that will be available to them once they're done with their schooling. And, you know, we all can recognize that some of the jobs that they have don't even exist today, but it's very important that they're prepared to take advantage of whatever opportunities show up. My
Mm.
senior year in high school, if someone had told me you're going to be sitting on console for launching a mission to Mars, I would have laughed in their face and said, yeah, right, okay. And, looking back on it, 2020 hindsight, I'm grateful for having a good foundation, not only just academic, but the faith foundation as well, because
Mm.
those two coupled serve to provide a purpose and focus for your life. And I'm finding with some of the students of today, absent that faith component, you're just kind of going through the motions
Mhm.
of life, and you're trying to figure out something that's already been defined, but you want to allow yourself to accept it.
Mhm.
And, again, that was one of the reasons for the book, because it provides another opportunity to join and, bring up that conversation that you can't disconnect the two. For example, even this past summer, I had an opportunity to work with the church. We partnered and did a Steam Through the Bible VBS, but we were able to tie it, to the space component so that you could see that the math,
Mm.
the science, everything is there. You can't divorce the two. And with that, you're establishing a purpose and a reason for why you want to do or why you want to be successful. So
Wow.
that is my leap into teaching. And I'm glad I'm not limited to just the classroom. I've had an opportunity to speak to, community groups. I joined the Atlanta Astronomy Club last year, so I had a chance to present at one of their stargazing events. I called it my journey from Atlanta to Mars and back, where it has been a round trip. From the perspective that I look at this point, and I'm just excited about what this next generation is going to be able to do.
Awesome. Well, what is kind of your next big adventure? Do you have something on the horizon?
I have no idea what my next big adventure is, and I say that kind of tongue in cheek because over the years, the things that have worked out well for me were those things that I had not planned. And they were just God kind of working the details. So I would be lying to you if I told you I grew up wanting to work for NASA, because I didn't. But I had a wonderful opportunity. Um, the school where I wanted to teach was not where I ended up, but it turned out to be a blessing because I was able to serve even better
Mm.
where God ended up placing me, from my initial job assignment up to where I am now. And so I just, my prayer is that I have more opportunities to leverage the background that I had, and just kind of serve as a critical part of that connection that I see as missing, is the you know faith, science, belief, all of that does not have to be. antagonistic. It's not mutually
Mhm.
exclusive. And as I look through, some of the curricula and standards, especially for public education, it seems to foster that division. And I'm not a fan of that division. So maybe I should say next on my horizon is trying to be a bridge to bring that connection back.
Awesome. Well, we do have some kids that listen to the show,
Oh, great.
and just because I know a couple of them, my nephew and niece specifically.
Okay.
But I do have a lot of adults that have children, um, or that are thinking about having children. What would you say to parents or to kids, um, to encourage them to investigate, at least
Mhm.
investigate these kind of careers?
So to investigate these kinds of careers, exposure is key. And, when I was growing up, I remember we used to go down to Florida almost every other summer for vacation. And so my first trip to Kennedy Space Center, I think I must have been about 4 years old. And those things stick. So the first thing I would say is exposure. Exposure, whether it's a physical trip to uh, Space Center, obviously, but anywhere that your child might be interested, whether it's a flight museum or just something that you take advantage of in your hometown. The
Mhm.
second one is giving them the opportunity to be around people in those different industries. At my church, I was really fortunate. One of the deacons was actually an engineer, and his encouragement was when I would come home when this was when I was in college, when I would come home, if I showed my report card to him, he gave me so much money for every A that I brought home. And so I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm motivated. So it's being around people with those different backgrounds and allowing them to engage with your child, taking advantage. We used to have, and COVID has changed so much now,
Mhm.
but we used to have the Bring Your Children to Work Day. And, I don't have any of my own, but in my church in Florida, I would always invite a couple of kids from my church and just
Mhm.
host them to come out to the Space Center with me and spend the day and just, those types of exposure. So for me, exposure is big. And the library. Um, I appreciate digital books, but I'm old school, just being able to touch the pages. And so, encouraging your children to read and providing some incentive to they until they get to the point where they're just ready to read on their own, but investigating those different careers through different stories and just talking with other people. And as different camps come up, many universities offer, STEM type camps, and many of them do it, at no cost to the child. Some of them are sponsored through the school district. Just taking advantage of that and listening to what your child may be interested in. Admittedly, the camps that I attended as a child were music camps, and I still ended up as an engineer. So you don't necessarily have to force feed it, but just, nurture the child, listen to, where their interests are and just kind of help provide those opportunities. So as they figure it out, and, I always encourage, you know, don't be afraid to ask God to take ownership and serve as your HR rep and let him open up some doors for you.
Awesome. Well, Wanda, how if people want to connect with you or follow you, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I would encourage people to follow me on Twitter at Wanda J. Harding and stay tuned. My book will be available later this fall. So it'll be available both on Amazon and my website, wandaharding.com. And I just look
Awesome.
forward to, getting that story out there. This is an anniversary edition of the book and just gave me an opportunity with everything that's going on to say, hey, there's more to the story. So I want to get it out there.
Awesome. And I'll put links down in the show notes. And I'll even go back and put, if the book's not listed yet, I'll go back and put the link to the book when it does become available. Send me an email, let me know, and I'll
Will
add that to
do.
the show notes. Wa-
Absolutely.
Wanda, it has been phenomenal having you on the show. It has been so wonderful getting to meet you.
And I so appreciate this opportunity to share with you. I love the title Christian Nerds because, yes, there are a lot of us out there, but this has been wonderful. And I so appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Wanda. It was great getting to know her. If you want to keep up with her or purchase her book, When I Consider God's Amazing Universe, check out the links in the show notes below. Well, that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, just click all those links down below so you can keep up with us whenever we release new content. And you can find all of our social links to our YouTube channel, and to our online store at ChristianNerdsUnite.com. And we would really appreciate it if you would share this episode with all your friends. If you enjoyed the show and want to help even more, consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. We've changed all of our Patreon levels, and every level has great benefits and makes a huge difference in the ministry we're able to do. Supporters will also get to hear exclusive stories of believers we're serving around the world through our ministry partners. To check it out or to partner with us, go to patreon.com/ChristianNerdsUnite or ChristianNerdsUnite.com and click on support from the menu. Before you go, I do want to leave you with this blessing from Romans 15. May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind toward each other that Christ Jesus had, so that with one mind and one voice you may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. We'll see you soon. Blessings.